to survive the classroom.
Hi, Andrea. I have an insane story for you. I have been a teacher for 24 years. Most of that, I've been a computer teacher. And at one point, I was teaching middle school computer classes. And I had a student who came up to me one day and said, "Hey, you really need to look at the kid next to me at what he's looking at on his computer." And I was like, "Okay." So I have software that lets me see what websites they're on. And sure enough, the kid was looking at porn in my classroom. And he was sitting probably less than 5 feet away from where I was as the teacher. Um, I quickly got him off of his computer, obviously, ended up writing him up, took him to the principal's office, found out it wasn't the first time he had been caught doing this. He actually was using a VPN installed on a USB drive to get around the network filter, so he knew absolutely what he was doing was wrong. But even better than that, at the time, I was 34 weeks pregnant, and that little incident, I firmly believe, sent my blood pressure through the roof. And within about 5 hours of that happening, I delivered my daughter via an emergency C-section due to preeclampsia. So that's my crazy story. Hopefully you enjoy it.
Oh my gosh. Unfortunately, I don't know a whole lot of teachers at this stage, especially the second we became one-to-one with computers. So one-to-one meaning like everyone's got a computer in your classroom. Um, I think pretty much immediately, especially secondary, like middle school and high school teachers, we started like stumbling upon kids watching porn. And here's the other thing I think to keep in mind with that is like there's like capital like P porn, right? And then there is content that's just like wildly inappropriate that might not be that, but is still way more graphic than anything you should ever be watching at school, right? And so, I mean, I had students that were watching like Euphoria. And so there was like really insane graphic drug use and like all of these different like HBO shows and like all of these different shows that like, okay, you're not technically on like Cornhub or anything like that, but you are pretty darn close. And that has been, I think, one of the really difficult things with having kids that have access to the internet so young with very little guardrails set in place is that like their brains are literally not done cooking yet, right? So their prefrontal cortex, like that kid knew what he was doing is wrong, but they're so dumb. They're so dumb that like they're like, no, I'm just gonna and that like to do it in class next to the teacher where another student can see it is wild behavior. I remember when in the midst of COVID, we were all online. We were dealing with like everything. Everybody was like on their own computers at home, right? But we still had that same software she's talking about where you could see kids' computers. And so I was so afraid of accidentally seeing something that I basically told all of the kids, like, hey guys, we're going to work on this writing assignment. I'm going to view your screens in 10, 9. I would count it down because I taught high schoolers and they're all in their own homes. They're a lot of them unsupervised because their parents are at work and all of that. And so I'm like, and now, and thankfully, actually during COVID, I didn't end up seeing anything crazy. It was usually like during class where I would have a kid that would be like sitting with his computer kind of like propped to the back. And I would sometimes stumble upon stuff like that. But I mean, the kids always knew when you were looking at their computer because a little thing would pop up and they're on district Wi-Fi. And you know that they've had to either use a VPN or they've done some sort of workaround. So these kids know what they're doing is not appropriate and not okay. But kids are kids, you know, like they find workarounds for stuff like that, unfortunately. Thank you so much for watching. Want more of How to Survive the Classroom? You can watch the rest of the episode right now. Just click on that little box over there. Do you see it? And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Okay, bye.